Hello, guys. Good evening. Thank you for joining this session. This evening topics would be product development and product management. And our guest for the evening is Antoniya, who will be leading it and presenting it. So I'll let her to present herself. We will also have support from Daniel and Emil as guests. And I'll be facilitating the questions and so on. There will be two parts. The first part will be the presentation from Antoniya, which will be for about an hour and a half. Then we'll make a small break for 10 minutes and we continue with your questions. Feel free to post your questions in the QA session in Zoom and we'll be happy to answer them. So thank you, and Antoniya, good luck.
Thanks for the introduction, Sava. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Antoniya, as you've already heard, and my professional experience dates back to 2007 in the area of project and product management. I have worked for multinational corporations such as HP and CSC, also for the American University in Bulgaria, and for some startup Bulgarian companies like Istisoft and SumUp. For the past couple of years, I'm dedicated to creating products in the fintech industry, working for SumUp as a senior product manager. I also have a couple of certifications in the area. You can see them listed on the slide. And I have also previous experience delivering different trainings in the field of project and product management. So I hope you enjoy today's training session. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A spot in the Zoom meeting and we will discuss them later. So let's get started. I will stop the video so you can focus on the presentation. And yeah, ping me in the Q&A if you have any questions. Okay, so these are the main topics that we are going to cover today. I will start with some introduction about the product manager role itself, why and how modern it is these days. We will also go through the different stages of product companies and discuss what challenges or opportunities you may face depending on the company that you work for. We will talk about nowadays modern product teams, how they work and how they're organized. We will also discuss the development process used by these teams, focusing on the so-called product discovery and product delivery. And at the end of the presentation, I have dedicated a couple of slides related to the PM career itself. I will recommend you some courses to look at, books and events you can explore, and also some useful tools which will help you kick off your career in the product management field. Okay, so let's start with the product manager role. Based on my experience and also here sharing the view of Marty Kagan, who is considered to be the father of modern product management, I strongly believe that behind every great product, there is someone who is working tirelessly and who leads the product team to combine technology and design in order to solve real customer problems in a way that meets also the needs of the business. These people usually have the title product manager, but they might be also the startup co-founder or CEO if you're talking about really just starting companies, or it could be someone in another role on the team who stepped up just because there was a need for someone to cover also the product management area. Furthermore, this role of the product manager is very distinct from the design, engineering, marketing functions, and also from the traditional project manager role. The product manager role is usually a full-time assignment, and to be honest, it requires a lot of time and dedication, and I personally don't know many people who can do it in less than 50, 60 hours per week, to be honest. On one hand, the responsibilities of the product manager are pretty straightforward. He or she is responsible for evaluating opportunities and also determining what gets built and delivered to customers. We generally describe what needs to get built onto the so-called product backlog, which you've probably heard about if you explored the area before or if you have looked into some Scrum practices. And in general, it sounds pretty simple. What's hard actually is to make sure that what goes on this product backlog is worth building. And today on the best product teams, the engineers and the designers want to see some evidence that what you're asking to build is really worth building. The product manager role is considered very important, especially by today's CEOs and venture capitalists. And why is that? It's because every business depends on customers, and what customers buy or choose to use is the product. The product is the result of what the product team builds, and the product manager is responsible for what the product team will build at the end of the day. So this is why the product manager is the person who is usually held responsible and accountable for the success of the product. When a product succeeds, it's usually considered that it's thanks to the effort of the whole team. But when it fails, it's usually the product manager's fault. In general, this role is so diverse that it's considered to be a kind of a collaborator or contributor role to the whole product team. And there are four main areas or four main things that the product team will count on the product manager to bring to the table. And here I have listed these four areas, but let's quickly go through each one of them. First and foremost, it's the deep knowledge of the actual users and customers. And to make this explicit, you need to become an acknowledged expert on the customer. You need to know their issues, their pains, desires, how they think, and for the business products also how your users work, how they decide what to buy. This is what informs so many of the decisions that must be made every day. Without this deep customer knowledge, you will be just guessing what your team is working on. And that's why this requires both qualitative learning, which is understanding why our users and customers behave the way they do, and also quantitative learning or understanding what they're doing. And this is what we'll talk about also later in the presentation. So it goes without saying that if you work as a product manager, you need to be an undisputed expert on your product. Today, product managers are also expected to be comfortable with data and analytics. They're expected to have both quantitative skills as well as qualitative skills, especially considering how the internet enables unprecedented volume and timeliness of data. And big part of knowing your customer, as I said earlier, it's understanding what they're doing with your product. And based on my experience, most product managers start their day with some time dedicated to half an hour or a whole hour, dedicated to looking into data, looking into the analytics tools, understanding what's been happening in the past 24 hours with your product or service. You might be looking at sales analytics and usage analytics, looking at some results of A/B tests if you're running experiments. Of course, in some companies or teams, you may have data analysts to help you with that. But in general, it's expected that every product manager should have deep enough knowledge of data so that he or she can look at the data, interpret it, and analyze it for the needs of the team. Successful products are not only loved by your customers, but they also work and need to work for your business so that it's successful. And the third critical contribution, and the one which is very often considered to be the most difficult by many product managers, is the deep understanding of the business and how it works and your role and the role that your product plays in the business. And this is tougher than it sounds. This means that you need to know your various stakeholders and also to learn what are their constraints, what are their needs. And they're usually key stakeholders representing general management, sales, marketing, finance, even legal departments, customer support as well. The CEO is usually a very important stakeholder as well. So succeeding in the job of product means convincing each key stakeholder that you understand their constraints and needs, and that whatever you build with your team, you will deliver solutions that have considered these constraints or needs. And the fourth critical contribution is the deep knowledge of the market and the industry in which you're operating. This includes not only your competitors, but also some key trends in technology, customer behaviors and expectations, following the relevant industry analysts, and understanding the role of social media for your market and customers. Furthermore, your industry is constantly moving in most cases, so we must focus on creating products for where the market will be tomorrow and not for where it was yesterday. So this knowledge of the industry and the business is also very, very critical. So summarizing the four main areas of knowledge and expertise that you need to bring to your team, it's a deep knowledge of the customer, of the data, of the business and its stakeholders, and also of your market and your industry. And yeah, I warned you, it's a lot of work. One additional note here, especially related to the industry and the domain, there are some specific cases where the product manager might be supported by a so-called domain expert or subject matter expert, especially in fields like legal or medical products and services, taxes as well. These are very specific areas which require deep knowledge and understanding, and it's usually difficult to find product manager who is both good in product management, but also a specialist in this particular area. But again, these are rare and specific cases. Okay, and I've put here a quote by Larry Page of Google, which I really love, and it really well describes the role of the product manager. The honest truth is that the product manager usually needs to be among the strongest talent in the company. And the recipe for success in this role includes deep technical knowledge and understanding, business savviness, creativeness, and persistence to make sure that you succeed in all these areas that I have previously talked about. Okay, and there are usually some questions related to how the product manager role differs from the product owner role. If you looked at Agile or the Scrum framework before, you're probably familiar with the product owner role. And I wanted to make some clear distinguishment here on this slide. So in general, we can say that the product owner is the name of the role on an Agile team for the person who is responsible for the product backlog. And Agile is used not only in product companies, but in various types of companies. In product companies, it's critical that the product manager also be the product owner. If we split the two roles into two people, some very common and predictable problems may occur. Most commonly, the loss of the team's ability to innovate and consistently create new value for the business and its customers. And moreover, the additional responsibilities of the product manager are what enables a good product owner decisions in a product company. And anyways, the product managers are usually encouraged to learn the development process their team is using. And very often product managers take courses or certifications on the product owner role so that they're familiar with its responsibilities and what part it plays into the development process. But in general, to summarize, the product owner responsibilities are just a small subset of the product manager responsibilities. But it's critical and crucial for the PM to cover both. And here on the slide, you can see how the product manager role is focused on many diverse areas, which are kind of also external to the team itself, focusing on the business case realization, making some decisions related to whether to build or buy a new product, also the pricing, promotion, marketing of the product itself, working with data and forecast, as we already said, focusing on a longer term vision and strategy for the product development. While the product owner is usually focused on developing and managing the backlog of items that the team needs to work on, refining these items, collaborating with the developers, tracking the releases as well. But as I said, in most modern teams and companies, all these activities or responsibilities fall under the head of the product manager. But again, this slide is just for better visualization and representation of how the two roles differ. So kind of related to the previous slide where you've seen a lot of typical product manager activities described. Here, I wanted to share with you how a typical product manager day may look like. But yeah, instead of just listing some activities, I looked at the latest product management trends and benchmarks report for last year. And they've made a great survey where product managers all over the world participated, and they've shared what are their main activities as product managers. So they're pretty good description of what goes on a daily basis. You can see that a lot of time is dedicated to just daily business and ad hoc requests, different people coming with different questions, asking you what's going on or what you plan to work on or why some feature is working the way it is. So firefighting takes a lot of the time of a product manager. A lot of time goes into meetings. Some of them are with product focus, others are with the team focusing on the development itself and how it progresses. Usually a lot of time is spent also working on more strategic initiatives, either on the company level, what are the objectives and vision and strategy for future development, and also how your product in particular contributes to that, or how some more senior people might be focusing on developing the product manager practices within the company, working on the so-called organizational maturity of the teams. A lot of time is lately, especially with good product teams, a lot of time is spent into interacting with customers. And we'll also talk about it later, focusing on how important it is to know your users really well, to communicate with them on a regular basis, and to interact with them. And of course, we said some time is dedicated to data, reading different analysis and research. So overall, I think this survey chart is a pretty good representation of what goes on a daily basis. Okay. Moving forward, I will be very honest with you about the demands of the role. I've already been, so probably it's very clear to you already that the product manager position is not a 9 to 6 job. And yeah, I'm not saying that you need to spend like 15 hours a day in the office, but there is just a lot of work to be done, and it follows you home every night. Pretty much any other role on the product team, in my view, is better if you're looking for some work-life balance. But if you're if you are a kind of person who is motivated by learning and experiencing different stuff every day, by collaborating and communicating with various people, this role could be a great fit for you. It just requires a lot of time, a lot of dedication to make sure that you cover well enough all the areas of expertise that I've mentioned on the previous slide. So the level of time and effort required by the product manager role is extremely tough to sustain, and you need to be passionate about it in order to be successful. Okay, so if there are any questions, if there are no questions, I will move to the next part of the presentation.
Sorry,
yeah?
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you know any technique? What would you recommend me to manage my time? Or how I should tackle this? It's easy to say manage your time, but how to do that in very practical terms?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, there are different even trainings in the field of time management, also depending on what you do on a daily basis. But what I found useful in the last couple of years is using my calendar as a tool to manage my time. So in addition to all the meetings that I have in the role of a product manager, either with my team or with some stakeholders, I plan my week in advance, and I book some slots in my calendar for looking at the data and insights, for reading different researches and analyses which are related to my industry and to my product, looking at what the competitors are doing. So otherwise you will be bombarded with new meeting invites probably, or your team will be asking you various questions, and at the end of the day it's really hard to focus and dedicate more time into a certain area, so you can really think deeper about how you want to develop your product. So I found this a very useful practice, just book in advance some time, an hour or two, depending on what you do in your calendar, and in this way you make sure that you will dedicate the time for this particular activity. And also, if you're working for a company or with a team, other people will see that you're busy, and most probably they won't interrupt you. So yeah, this is the practice I can share from personal experience.
Thank you. And you're trying probably to keep it strict, right? You're not allowing as much as possible.
Yes,
changes.
yeah. I'm trying to. Of course, sometimes unexpected things may pop up which are critical, and you need to attend to them. But in most cases, I try to stick to this. We've also tried another practice in the past, which was called no meeting Tuesday and Thursday. So 2 days of the week were free on your calendar, and this was a practice that the whole company adopted. And you were supposed to know that you shouldn't bother your colleagues on Tuesday and Thursday with meetings, so that they can focus on doing the real job. But I think it lasted just for a couple of months, and we realized that it's not sustainable, because especially in fast growing and developing companies, in scaling companies, the pace is so fast that things change every day. And if a colleague comes to you with a critical problem or need of help, you cannot say to them, sorry, I can't talk to you today, it's no meeting day. You will need to be there and jump in if it's needed. So it could work for some people. It's definitely worth trying, but in our case, it didn't work out. Not for me, and also not for the company as a whole.
Okay, thanks. And do you? So let's say we should always learn, right? That's the the way to go. So do you analyze after you finish the week or the month where you spent your time, and what do you do? Something like learnings or something based on that? How to improve?
Well, in general, I try to do this on a regular basis. After like each happening or event, I'm trying to run some retrospective in my mind and see what went well and what didn't go so well. As a team, we're always planning some retrospection meetings where we discuss what went well and what didn't go well. But in terms of time managing or managing your work as a whole, over the years, I've kind of adopted this as as a personal approach, so that I'm constantly doing it. It's also very exhausting to be thinking about how you can improve or change things all the time. But I definitely think it's good to spend some time on a regular basis reflecting on what you tried. Did it work out for you? Do you need to change something or not? Even look for new practices or tools and techniques and experiment with them, because you don't know what might work well. So yeah, definitely some time on reflection and retrospection is a must.
Thank you very much. Great answer.
Sure. Okay. So moving forward, as I mentioned earlier on the agenda slide, I have dedicated some space in the presentation for talking about the main stages through which product companies usually go, so that you can see for yourself what might be the challenges you will probably face or what opportunities you may face in each stage, depending on the company you choose to work for. So in general, in the technology world, there are three stages of companies which are distinguished. These are the startups, growth stage companies, and enterprise companies. Starting with the startup companies, a startup can loosely be defined as a new product company that needs to yet achieve the so-called product market fit, or the startup is still trying to come up with a product that can power a viable business. In a startup, the product manager role is usually covered by one of the co-founders. It's rare that a startup will hire a product manager, dedicated product manager from the very beginning. Typically, there are fewer than 25 engineers covering a range of one product team to maybe 4 up to 5, not more. And the reality of a startup life is that you're in a race to achieve product market fit before you run out of money. Nothing else much matters until you can come up with a strong product that meets the needs of the initial market that you have identified. So most of the focus of the young company is on the product. And startups usually have a limited amount of early funding, which is intended to determine if the company can discover and deliver the necessary product. So the closer you come to running out of money, the more frantic the pace becomes and the more desperate the team and also the leadership becomes. And while money and time are typically tight, good startups are optimized to learn and move quickly. And there's normally very little bureaucracy to slow them down. So despite the high failure rate of the technology startups, which is no secret to all of us, the few that succeed are usually those that are really good at product discovery, which I will cover later in the presentation. So at the end of the day, working for a startup racing toward product market fit could be very stressful, exhausting, and even risky. You may end up with no salary, but it can be also very positive experience. And if things go well, it could be financially rewarding as well. And those startups which are skilled and fortunate enough to get to product market fit, they're ready to tackle another equally difficult challenge, which is how to effectively grow and scale the business, or the second stage of the company, the so-called growth stage. There are many significant challenges involved in growing and scaling a startup into a large successful business. It's a very difficult challenge, but at the same time, it's a good problem to have, because it means that your business is growing, you have enough investments, and you just need to come up with a great strategy and plan how to organize the company and develop it further. In addition to hiring a lot more people, usually in this stage, we need to figure out how to replicate our earlier successes with new adjacent products and services. At the same time, we need to grow the core business as fast as possible. In this growth stage, typically there are between 25 and could be several hundred engineers. So there are many people around to help, but there is also a lot of organizational stress usually. Very often product teams are complaining that they don't understand the big picture anymore. They don't see or can't see how their work contributes to the larger goals. And they're struggling with what it means to be a truly empowered, autonomous teams. Very often sales and marketing teams may start complaining that their go-to-market strategies that worked for the first product during the startup ages are no longer appropriate for the new product if you're building a whole portfolio of products and additional services. Also, the technology infrastructure that was created to meet the needs of the initial product is very often bursting at the seams, and you start hearing the term technical debt from every engineer around. This stage is also tough on the leaders because the leadership style and the mechanisms that worked while the company was a young startup often fail to scale. And the leaders are forced to change their roles and in many cases their behaviors. Oftentimes the leadership of the company might be completely changed with new, more senior, more mature experts. But usually the motivation to overcome these challenges is very strong. And very often companies in this stage of development are in the pursuit of public offering, going public, or maybe being acquired by an existing bigger enterprise. So this real possibility of having a significant and positive impact on the world or being part of something bigger might be very motivating for the people in the company. And for those companies that succeed in scaling and that want to create a lasting business, some of the toughest challenges still lie ahead. Strong tech product companies know that they need to ensure consistent product innovation. This means constantly creating new value for their customers and for their business, not just tweaking or optimizing the existing products, but also developing each product so that it reaches its full potential. And yet many large enterprise companies have already embarked on a slow death spiral. They become all about leveraging the value or the brand that they have created in the past years or even decades earlier. And you've probably heard about such companies. They just stay afloat for many years. Of course, they cannot rarely fail for a couple of days, but sometimes, relying on the brand or the product that you created years ago is just a matter of time for the company to fail. And in such types of companies, very often new initiatives or ventures are being shut down, or there are a lot of obstacles and bureaucracy in front of new ideas or initiatives that may come up from people within the company. So these symptoms are very hard to miss, starting with diminished morale, lack of innovation, lack of motivation within the people, and also new product work is developed in a very, very slow pace. Of course, there are still large enterprise companies such as Adobe, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, even Netflix, which have been able to avoid this fate. And they have done this through introducing very big changes in the way they work and organize themselves. And modern product management and modern product teams, they are all about that. And later today, later in the following slides, you will see how these teams are usually organized, what roles they consist of, and also how the development process usually goes within such successful product companies. Okay, talking about product teams, every product begins with the people on the cross-functional product team. And how you define the roles and the people you select to staff the team will very likely prove to be a determining factor in its success or failure. And this is an area in which many companies fall short, stuck in the old models of the past. For many organizations, the roles and responsibilities discussed in the following slide represent significant differences from what they're used to. A modern product team is a group of people who usually bring together different specialized skills and responsibilities, and they feel real ownership for a product, or at least a substantial piece of a larger product. A big part of the concept of product teams is that they're there to solve hard problems for the business. They are given clear objectives and they own the delivery on those objectives. They're empowered to figure out the best way also to meet those objectives, and they're accountable for the results that they achieve.
Sorry, Tori, can we say that creating such teams is sort of decentralization of the elephant? Like the product manager is sort of the CEO for this team and for this small company within the company.
Yeah, I guess we can say that. Although there are some contradictory opinions about the product manager being the CEO, but at the end of the day, the goal is to have autonomous, empowered teams, which are cross-functional, as I said, consisting of different skills and expertise. So yeah, it's decentralization, as you said. But I think the ultimate goal is not for the product manager to be the CEO or the only leader, but for the team to mature enough so they can really work as a successful, effective team, knowing their goal and purpose, knowing how they contribute to the company strategy and vision for future development. And yeah, doing it as a team. Of course, usually in order to get there, the company goes through and the team goes through different stages and transformation. It's not something you can change overnight. And usually it's the product manager and the engineering manager or engineering lead. There are different titles across different companies. These are the people on whom usually companies and senior managers rely to drive the team forward until it becomes fully cross-functional, collaborative enough, and yeah, feeling empowered and accountable at the same time. And yeah, that's also my experience for the last couple of years at SumUp. We've changed the way we are organized a couple of times, starting from teams who work on different features or products, then changing to teams who are dedicated to a certain domain and owning different products within this domain. And then going to even a more mature phase where part of the team are also business people or stakeholders who may not be, or who are not developers or designers or product managers, but people who know the business from the other side, from the operational, more functional side, and they bring their business perspective or operational perspective to the table. And yeah, it kind of sounds like a small company within the bigger company, or a startup within the startup or the scaling company.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, on this slide I have described the more typical roles on a product team. The product team is comprised of at least a product manager and usually somewhere between 2 and 10 engineers. If you're creating a user-facing product, you may also have a product designer on your team as well. Of course, if you're working on let's say a set of APIs, you probably don't need a designer on your team, but many product teams need this person on board nowadays. It's the best. The designer is the best friend of the product manager. The teams might also have a few other members, such as product marketing manager, one or more test automation engineers, user researcher, data analyst as well. In bigger organizations, there could be even a delivery manager. The data analyst and the user researcher are usually considered luxury, especially in our region. These roles are highly demanded nowadays, and there are few people who are experienced enough in the area, or they can know their way around data or research, but it's difficult to find people who have worked for product companies before, and they so that they know how they can really contribute to a product team or to the business development itself. In general, there is no rule that says all product teams in a company need to be the same size or to contain all these roles. There is a practical upper bound on a team, which usually works out to be around 8 to 12 engineers. And I don't know, you've probably heard about the 2 pizza rule, which is intended to help keep teams in this range. The 2 pizza rule, yeah, the title speaks for itself, but the idea is that if you're able to feed the team with 2 pizzas, then the size is good enough. If 2 pizzas are no longer enough for the team, you may need to reconsider splitting it somehow or reorganizing it. But more important than the absolute size of the team is the balance of skills which are needed to ensure that we build the right things and build those things the right way. And of course, we cannot skip the product development process, which is plays a key role into the modern product management and how modern product teams work and operate. Unfortunately, today's reality is that most companies still have a process that is essentially waterfall at its core. Even if they say that they're agile or they work in a Scrum way, following the Scrum framework, very often the work is structured in a way that it follows some steps or a waterfall process. Usually you gather requirements, you analyze them, you come up with some design or prototype, then it's developed, then it's tested, then it's pushed to the end user or client. And essentially it's waterfall at its core. And what modern product teams look like and work like is very different. On the high level, there are 2 essential activities in all product teams. These activities are called product delivery and product discovery. It's because we need to discover the product to be built and we need to deliver that product to market. And in the following slides, I will focus in more detail on each one of them. Of course, when it comes to the product development process itself as a whole, it's hard and probably unnecessary to define a step-by-step, by-the-book product development process. There is no one-size-fits-all process that works for successful team. And that's because the product teams work on different stuff every day. You could be working on bigger initiatives on a company level. You could be working on some short-term projects, or let's say introducing some changes in your product due to regulatory changes such as GDPR or Brexit. You might be working on new features, some of which are small, others are bigger. You could be working on product optimizations, also bug fixes, or you could be just changing the content that is supporting your product. So yeah, again, it's hard and it's not necessary to have some strictly described process, step-by-step, one that you need to follow on a daily basis. It really depends on what the team is focused on in the current moment. And most product managers are working on solving some pretty hard problems, and it usually ends up taking some fairly complex system to power these solutions. For most teams, there are two very significant challenges to tackle. First, discovering in detail what the customer solution needs to be. That includes everything from making sure that there are enough customers that even need this solution in the first place, and then coming up with a solution that works for our customers and for our business. Even harder, we need to make sure we come up with a single solution that will work for many customers and not some series of special developments. And to do this, we need to be able to test out many ideas. We need to do this quickly and inexpensively so that we can keep learning and innovating. And second, we need to ensure that we deliver a robust and scalable implementation that our customers can depend on for consistently reliable value. The team needs to be able to release with confidence. Of course, you never have 100% confidence, but in general, you shouldn't release and pray that your new feature or your new product will work as expected. So you need to take into account that your customers need to be protected, your revenue and your brand, your colleagues as well, by considering always the reliability of what you've built, how scalable it is, how performant it is, and not forgetting about privacy and security and the security aspects. So we need to learn fast, but yet also release with confidence what our product team has worked on.
So if I may ask you something, how you gain this confidence? Being confident, it sounds like a bold statement, but how you achieve it?
I guess the following slides will kind of answer this question, but putting more time or investing more time into making sure that you're building the right thing in the first place. What this means, it means knowing your customer really well, knowing their pains or issues, having tested your idea on a smaller scale before you go with a big bang release for all your clients. Also making sure that, especially if you work in a more strict regulated industry, making sure that you're aware of all the legal, privacy or security aspects in the industry and in the area of the product that you are developing. So there's some homework you need to do in advance, and it's part of the kind of the practices that modern product teams apply on a daily basis. So yeah, making sure you've done your homework with the research on the customers, with some tests or even experiments, or creating a small prototype that you show to a small segment of your users and gathering their feedback, talking to legal or other operational functions within your company that might be impacted. Yeah, different areas that you need to cover. Again, it really depends on the industry and the business and the product. It might be a good practice here to have some kind of a checklist or check boxes that you need to cover before you release some new feature or new product, making sure that you are not missing some critical step. Also making sure that you've run enough tests, different tests on the feature, and knowing your system and how it performs. Yeah, I think these are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I already mentioned that discovery and delivery are the two main activities on a cross-functional product team, and they're typically ongoing and in parallel. There are several ways to think about this and to visualize it, but the concept is fairly simple. We are always working in parallel to both discover the necessary product to be built, which is usually done by the product manager and designer, and they work on this pretty much every single day, while the engineers work to deliver production quality product. The engineers are also helping daily on discovery, and many of the best innovations actually come from that participation. So it's not a minor point. And the product manager and the designer are also helping daily on delivery, mainly to clarify some intended behavior of a feature or product. But what you see on this graph is pretty much what's going on a high level. Again, on a modern, successful and efficient product management team, I believe that all team members should be engaged in both activities, in both in discovery and delivery. Of course, you want to put the engineer to do all day full time just discovery, but making sure that they're part of this process, and we'll later talk into more details about the process itself. This definitely ensures that the engineers will have better understanding of the product, of the customers and their needs. And also they will be more motivated into building it and into delivering more value for the end users. What powers the discovery and the delivery usually comes from the objectives, or these are usually the company objectives, some overarching objectives. And here on the following slide, I wanted to share with you a very popular technique which is used by a lot of companies nowadays to describe and to justify objectives, company objectives, and the product team's objectives and work as well. This technique is called objectives and key results, or OKRs. The OKR technique has enjoyed considerable success, especially inside technology product organizations from large to small. They're a very general tool that can be used by anyone in the organization, in any role, or you can even use it in your personal life. It's basically a technique for management, focus, and alignment. And as with any tool, there are many ways to use it, but there are some critical points that you need to keep in mind here. When they're used in the context of a company, the objectives should be qualitative. They basically present the business or the product goals, while key results need to be quantitative. They need to be measurable. And key results should be a measure of business results, not some output or task. And the way the technique is applied usually is that there are some defined company objectives and key results, and then there are the product team's objectives and key results, which are made in a way that should make very obviously how the product team work is contributing to the company objectives. And to make this even clearer, I've included here one example. So we can have an objective to make our, let's say, make our application fly during the next quarter, because yeah, I missed this point, but one of the critical aspects about the technique is that you need to establish some cadence for your time cadence for the organization. Typically, it could be annual for the organization's objective, but on a team level, on a product team level, very often these objectives change on a quarterly basis, especially in startups and fast-growing companies. Things change so quickly that every quarter objectives might be revised, and you may drop the work you've done for the past couple of months and focus on something completely different and new, depending on the business needs. So yeah, let's get back to the example. Our objective could be to make the application fly, and some key results that we can list here, thinking about what do we need to do so that the application really flies. One key result that we can expect is to reduce the loading time of the initial screen of our application by, let's say, 2 seconds. The second key result could be to achieve the filtering of 1,000 items to take less than 1 second. And a third possible key result could be that our support tickets related to sluggishness of the application are less than 5% of all tickets. So if we manage to achieve these key results, we expect that our application will be flying or performing way better. So yeah, you can see how with these measurable key results at the end of the quarter, you can make some reflection and retrospection and see that if the work you've done or if you've achieved these results, how they contribute to the overall objective that you have in place. Yeah, I hope this example makes things a bit clearer. Again, you can even try to work out with the technique in your personal life. If you make especially some New Year resolutions or new quarter resolutions, and come up with some more measurable key results that you want to achieve. Okay. So focusing on the first activity, which is part of the product development process, the product discovery. Discovery is very much about the intense collaboration of product management, user experience design, and engineering. In discovery, we are tackling the various risks before we write even a single line of production code. And the purpose of product discovery is to quickly separate the good ideas from the bad. The output of product discovery is usually a validated product backlog. Specifically, this means getting answers to 4 critical questions. Will our users buy this or choose to use it? Can the user figure out how to use it? Can our engineers build it? And can our stakeholders support it? And this is, it's not enough that it's just the product manager's opinion on these questions. We need to collect evidence. And product discovery involves running a series of very quick experiments, and to do these experiments quickly and, if possible, inexpensively. Very often we use prototypes rather than real products to gather this validated learning. At this point, let me just say that there are several types of prototypes, each for different risks and situations, but they all require at least an order of magnitude of less time and effort than building the real product that you want to do. And when it comes to how we do product discovery, there are a set of core principles that drive how we work. I've put here this nice quote by Ed Catmull from Pixar. who says that discovery by definition means that we don't know the answer when we start. And again, we want to dedicate more time into gathering some learnings and insights and making sure that we'll be building the right thing for our business and for our clients. And yeah, this goes back also to the discussion point that we had about releasing with confidence. So there are a couple of, as I said, couple of product discovery principles that we can follow in order to make sure that we are doing a great job with the discovery itself. And if we understand these principles, basically we can easily incorporate any new technique that emerges out there or any new framework for discovery, and we can apply it in our daily job and work and see how it works for our product and business. So let's go through these principles. The first one is that we know that we can't count on our customers to tell us what to build. In most cases, they don't know that. The most important thing is to establish a compelling value. Another principle is that as hard as the engineering is, defining the user experience is typically even harder and more critical to the success of our product. We also recognize that functionality, design, and technology are inherently intertwined. As I said, discovery is a lot about collaboration of all the functions within the product team. We also expect that many of our ideas won't work out, and the ones that do will usually require a couple of iterations until we fine-tune them. We know that we must validate our product ideas on actual customers, and our goal is to validate our ideas the fastest and cheapest way possible. And we have usually a range of techniques for that purpose, and we'll discuss them, some of these techniques on the next slide. We also need to validate the feasibility of our ideas during product discovery, not after that. Otherwise, it would be too late and we would have invested a lot of time and effort of the whole team. And we need to validate business viability with our stakeholders, again, during product discovery, not after that. And at the end of the day, it's all about shared learning. Shared learning within the product team, with stakeholders, and also better interaction, engagement, and gaining insights from the customers of your product. I mentioned that we have some techniques for getting a much deeper understanding of our users and customers, and for validating the product ideas, both qualitatively and quantitatively. And in fact, most of the techniques don't require the time of developers, which is important because we appreciate how much time and effort needs to go into creating the production quality software in the delivery part of the process. In general, there is no perfect dictionary or perfect book on the discovery techniques. There are different, you can look them up on Google. There are a lot of articles and books, different techniques which are helpful in different situations. But regardless of that, I will share with you some key techniques that I find, or I personally find useful. The first group of techniques could be grouped into the so-called type of framing techniques. These framing techniques help us to quickly identify what are the underlying issues that must be tackled during the product discovery. So if we're handed a potential solution, we need to clarify the underlying problem to be solved. We need to tease out the risks and determine where it makes sense to focus our time. We also need to ensure that we understand how our work fits into the work of other teams. So as the title speaks for itself, these framing techniques help us to frame the issue or the problem that we want to focus on. And there are some techniques like the opportunity assessment technique or the startup canvas model. You can look it up in Google. There are even free templates that can be used and applied if you want to frame a problem or a potential solution that you want to work on. The other group of techniques is for planning. They're useful throughout the product discovery effort, and they help us to identify the bigger challenges and to plan how we want to attack these challenges. Usually a good technique here is story mapping. Again, there is even a great book by Jeff Patton, and I've listed it in the book section of the presentation, dedicated to user story mapping. It's a great technique to outline the whole area or process or problem that you're focusing in, splitting it into various activities and sub-activities and getting the big picture and deciding on which area you want to focus on. There are, of course, a number of ways to come up with ideas, or these are the ideation techniques. Some sources are better than others in their potential for keeping us focused on the most important problems. Ideation techniques are designed to provide the product team with a wealth of promising solutions. We come up with a range of solutions aimed at the problems that we want to focus on. And again, after doing such ideation practices, at the end of the day, we can decide on what we want to focus on. So here we can use customer interviews, which is basically about coming up with some script of, let's say, interview questions that you want to ask your customers in order to get to know them better or to focus on a certain problem. And it helps you to gather a lot of helpful insights and learnings from your customers. Here, under the ideation techniques, some companies also apply the hack days, where they put all the developers into a usually new environment, and they give them 2 or 3 days to develop and work on whatever they want to, any idea that might help the business or the customers. Discovery sprints are usually also run here. Again, an interesting technique for which we can dedicate a whole new presentation. I have listed some of these on the following slides so that you can explore them later and get to know more about these techniques. We can also run a couple of prototypes. I mentioned prototypes earlier. They're a very easy, cheap way to run an experiment and to gather a customer feedback. We can do it even sometimes on a piece of paper and hand it to one of our users, or we can use some online free tools for creating prototypes and again showing it to our users to see how they react and what they will share as feedback. So product discovery is mostly about trying out an idea. We are essentially trying to separate the good ideas from the bad. Here we are defining a good idea as one that solves the underlying problem in a way that customers will buy, they can figure out how to use it. And we also have the time, the skills, and the technology on the team to build it. And also, this idea will work for various aspects of our business. So the way to think about discovery is that we only validate what we need to, and then we pick the right technique based on the particular situation. Okay. I think I've gone through all the discovery techniques, but in the meantime, I saw that Sava ran a quick survey with the group of participants. Do you want to share the results? Can we look at them now?
Yeah, the results are that according to this survey, 77% of our participants are using objective and key results in their organization.
Oh, that's great. If I read it correctly, 20 people are already familiar with the framework and they're using it with the technique. Nice. Yeah, we can even discuss further in the after the presentation in the discussion part.
Sure.
Okay. So the purpose of all these prototypes and experiments in discovery is to quickly come up with something that provides some evidence that what we're working on is worth building and that we can deliver to our customers. This means that the necessary scale, performance, reliability, fault tolerance, security, privacy, all these things I've put on the other side. For releasing with confidence, we need to consider them. Also internationalization, localization, if we're talking about a global product. Also making sure that the product works as advertised. The purpose of the product delivery is to build and deliver this production quality technology product, something you can sell and run a business on. And I focused more on discovery because this is something that is not done in every company, but most successful companies do it nowadays, and they invest more. Again, they invest more time and effort into discovery in order to make sure that they build the right thing. Otherwise, if you do it afterwards, after you ship your product or your feature and you figure out that it's not what your customers need and it's not profitable for your business, you've lost the time of your highly paid product team into building something that is not needed. So when it comes to delivery, it's pretty much about making sure that what you validated as an idea or a product gets into the hands of your customers. Of course, here are some useful practices and techniques that can be applied. I've shared here the problems with the big bang releases back in the past or with big enterprises. There have been these release roadmaps for the next 1 to even 3 years with features and products that you want to deliver to your customers. But, you know, imagine today's fast-paced developing industries and the changing environment around us, even in this pandemic context, it's crazy to plan the next 2 and 3 years. And it's probably a recipe for failure. What most successful companies focus on nowadays is slowly moving to the so-called continuous deployment or continuous integration and continuous deployment, where various teams can work on their products or subsets of products, make changes to them, introduce changes even every single day. What I can share from my personal experience is that when, in the past, when I worked for big corporations, we definitely applied the big bang releases. We worked with customers, with projects and roadmaps for the next year or next 2 years, which created a lot of problems later on. When I joined SumUp 4 years ago already, the teams there, the product teams, were working with the so-called release trains, which in this case meant that every Tuesday we have a release manager to deploy all the new stuff to production, and every product team needs to fit into the schedule of this release. So you need to make sure that by next Tuesday your feature is developed, it's properly tested, and it's ready to be handed to your customers by deploying to production. And you can imagine that this requires a lot of coordination. Sometimes there might be clashes between the code of different teams, especially if they're working in the same environment and infrastructure. So naturally came the need for this parallel deployment for CI and CD, where again, there are a lot of books and helpful articles on the topic, but a lot of teams nowadays work in this way. And yeah, we've also moved from the release trains to every Tuesday to 10, 20, maybe even more releases per day now, where every team is independent, every team has its infrastructure and its own release cycle. And if you figure out the problem, you can fix it immediately if you have the resources and push it to production to your end users. Of course, with the growth of the company and the teams and the products, as I said earlier, you will start hearing more about technical debt, especially if you've previously worked on a common infrastructure and environment with a couple of other teams in one big monolithic product architecture, let's say. This requires a lot of development work to put it into the proper shape, maybe to split it into microservices to make sure that the infrastructure is scalable or performant enough. And that's why usually the good practice is that about 20% of the time of the developers is dedicated, and QAs as well, is dedicated to managing this technical debt within the organization. Interesting question Sava is posting here for you. What's the frequency of new releases in your work? That would be good to know. Okay, I'm looking forward to the answers. In the meantime, I wanted to share the next slide. Sava, can you see my slide or the surveys on top of it? Okay.
I can see continuous conversation.
Okay, because I'm seeing the survey as well, and I was wondering.
No, it's okay. Well.
Okay, yeah. So in this context of making sure that you're innovating all the time, that you're investing more time into discovery than delivery, it's at the end of the day, it's a continuous conversation that goes on within the product team and also with the users of the product. And I find that most product teams have a much better sense of how to accomplish the second goal of delivering solid software than how to accomplish the first goal of rapid experimentation and discovery. And continuous delivery is a good example of an advanced delivery technique, again, used by the teams in order to understand how important it is to ship a series of small incremental changes when it comes to a complex system or a solution or a product that you have in place. So again, we are trying to focus on the smallest thing that we can develop and ship to our users, see how it affects their behavior, how it changes the way they work or they use our product, and then come up with some strategies, response strategies of what we are going to do about it. Do we go with the full-fledged development of our feature or solution, or we drop it completely and come up with a completely new idea? And it's kind of an endless loop. So maybe to sum it up, here is the key to successful product management and to successful product development process. You and your team need to have this mindset of continuous learning, also the strive for continuous improvement, the mindset of continuous humility, putting yourself in the shoes of your users and understanding their behavior, and the mindset of continuous agility, making sure that you're flexible enough, adaptable enough to the changes in the environment around you or in the business of your merchants. Yeah, I said it already, but again, you also as a person in this role need to be ready and flexible enough to drop your focus, your priorities, the work you've done sometimes for the last couple of months, and start from scratch working on something new which is needed now by either by your business or by your customers. And yeah, maybe a great example here is GDPR or Brexit, which created a lot of tension in many companies. But yeah, no matter what strategies or goals we had back then for the development of our products, for the development of the companies, for a certain period of time, we needed to drop everything and focus on the new legislation, on the new regulations to make sure that we are compliant on time. Otherwise, we go out of business. Okay. I think we don't have yet the results of the survey. Maybe, okay, here it is. Let's see. So I think most responses are about 4 weeks.
Which should be the edge case, right?
Yeah. Okay, but I'm curious about the other. Maybe we should have put 1 day as a response. Maybe we have some really advanced product team representatives here who are releasing every day. That would be cool.
In my defense, I'm not the one who prepared the poll. Anyway.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was you. Okay, yeah, but again, I think these results represent what I said earlier as kind of the old models of how still a lot of companies work. Sometimes it might be due to lack of enough resources, either in terms of infrastructure and tool, or in terms of people, developers, product managers, making sure that you have enough people to focus on the problems and to be constantly developing and delivering new stuff to the end users. So it really depends on the case and the company. But the ultimate goal and the proven success practices are the ones that we just talked about. So it will be great if more people, I encourage you guys to look at these practices, to try to experiment with them in your companies, maybe try out with a single team, or build your next feature this way and see how it goes. It will be a great learning experience. Okay, and as I promised you earlier, I've dedicated the last part of the presentation to starting a career as a product manager, and I will share some tips and tricks, some recommendations for people who are interested and who want to try out. It would be great if we have some aspiring or already product managers in the participants. I would love to hear your thoughts and questions. Here I have prepared a list of some important academic classes and learning topics that you can look at and explore. Usually product managers come from very different disciplines. Some come from computer science, others may come from business or economics. You will find great product managers that come even from politics, philosophy, art, literature, history, and everything in between. I have personally graduated in international relations, which is not close to any of the development or computer science areas. But I find that, the different education and diverse background in the working experience very useful on a daily basis, because you bring a completely new perspective to the team. If you want to be an engineer or a designer, there's an academic education that will prepare you for a career in those fields, but that's not the case for product management. That's because what's most essential for the job is the smart, creative, and persistent qualities of a good product manager. And yeah, again, here's the list of courses that may help you gather knowledge in different areas, which are useful on a daily basis. So you can look into some introductory courses to computer programming, finance, or business accounting. You can explore different discovery techniques, customer discovery, product discovery, the lean startup techniques. There's even a book about the lean startup. Look into design thinking, some lean UX techniques. Data analytics, as I mentioned, is a key aspect of the role. Also some introduction to SQL and some how you can run some simple queries in your database. This will also help you with the data analysis if you don't have a person who is experienced in this area and can support you with the data analytics. And also different agile methods and frameworks. The more you know, the more different and diverse perspective you can bring to the table. And again, I encourage you to try out different techniques in your daily basis, in your daily work, and see what works well for you and what doesn't. Here also, because people usually ask about tools, so here I've shared the tools that I've used the most during the last couple of years. So for work organization, for a high-level picture and management, Trello is a great tool. It's free. You can even use it to organize your personal life and goals. So yeah, it's pretty easy to play around with and explore it if you don't know it already. Jira is another popular tool used by software development teams, which is really, it goes deeper on the operational and executional level when you split the work into various tasks, and you can follow their progress in Jira until the very deployment to production. Miro is another great tool for running, especially for running meetings. You can use it as a virtual sticky notes where you can place your thoughts, or let's say if you're running some retrospection meeting with your team, you can put again the thoughts of the team on sticky notes, group them, let's say into what went well with the work for the last month, what didn't go well, what we want to change. It's a great sticky note virtual board. Also, we've used it for story mapping, the technique that I shared with you in the product discovery, putting, let's say, splitting a big process into smaller steps and activities and visualizing it as a flow. Miro is a great tool for that as well. Of course, the Google suite of products, most of them are free, and yeah, you can use them on a daily basis. Sometimes even Excel spreadsheet is enough to, plan your work, see the progress, and visualize what's going on. Optimizely is a very popular tool for running experiments, and especially for A/B testing when you want to test out, let's say, 2 or 3 different features or variants of a feature and see how a group of your users accept it, how they behave with it. And the tool itself will give you a lot of data and understanding of the experiment, and you will be able to see if it's a success or not. And Optimizely actually has great blog with a lot of interesting topics on product discovery, on experimentation. They run a lot of free webinars. So if you're interested in this topic, definitely check them out and sign up for their newsletter. Of course, there are many other tools out there, but these are the ones I've personally used and can recommend. Okay, yeah. And if you're interested in the role, I guess you care about the salaries as well. So I've put here some data coming from the same report I mentioned earlier, the Product Management Trends and Benchmarks report for 2020. So here you can see what is the average annual salary of a product manager. in US dollars. Yeah, based on my observations, I think the salary is pretty close to the salaries of engineers or senior engineers. Again, it depends on the seniority of the person and the company, but I think they're pretty comparable nowadays. And based on, I've looked at the Bulgarian survey run in the last couple of years. I think for Bulgaria, just to give you an idea, the annual salary is close to the, let's say, Indian or Russian one. Again, it depends and varies from company to company, but just to give you an idea of how things are here.
Can I ask, are there any levels of seniority in these fields, in the field of the product management? Probably they are.
Yes.
Is there something like junior product manager?
Yes, there is. Usually it's called associate product manager. It's the modern title. But again, yeah, these titles and roles really depend from company to company, and there are some specifics in the different countries as well. This report that I mentioned here, it's very exhaustive, and if any of you guys interested, you can look it up. It's free, and there are a lot of splits in terms of roles, pay across countries, across industries. But in general, yeah, again, it depends on the company and its size and organizational structure. But what we have at SumUp and what I've seen at other companies is having the associate product manager as some entry point into the role. Then we have product manager, senior product manager for more experienced people. Sometimes the senior product manager can be also not just running product teams, but also people manager of other product managers, more junior ones, and mentoring them into the role. There is could be a head of product or group product manager. Then we have director of product or vice president of product. Again, it depends on the titles that the company uses. I think these are the most common ones.
And if someone wants to step in as an associate product manager, is it required to have any relevant experience at all?
It depends. It's nice to have, but I think based on my experience with looking for product managers and also running interviews in the last 2-3 years, it's really hard to find people who are.
That's why I'm asking. There is a context. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's really high. It's hard to find experienced product managers, and that's why even at SumUp we have introduced this role of associate product manager for people who want to transition, usually from business analysis, sometimes even from quality assurance, project managers who want to transition into product management. Again, it depends on a case-by-case basis and the person's previous working experience and education. Usually what matters for us during the hiring process is the person itself with his or her qualities and attitude. We're usually looking for smart, creative, persistent people who will be, flexible enough, adaptable enough to the fast pace of the business, of the development process, and who are really, ready to step into this diverse role and really open to learning, to experimenting. And who are not stuck into these old models of someone gives me the full list of requirements or the items that the team needs to work on, and then I just go and give it to the developers and they work on these items. So yeah, because the market here lacks many experienced people in the area, we are more now focusing on the qualities and the diverse background and experience of the people. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. And how long it takes? I know for the engineers, usually it's between 3 and 5 years to become from associates or from juniors, as we call them, to let's say something like mid-level. How about the product manager?
Again,
I know that it depends.
It depends, yeah. I think
but on average?
On average, I think 2 years. Yeah, it could be faster though. Again, depending on how quickly you learn, how quickly you get to know your business and industry, your product.
So let's say that
it also depends on the company itself, not just the person, because yeah, it depends on the product managers that are already there, what experience they have, what's the organizational structure. But yeah, 2-3 years should be the top, I think.
Should be top. So let's say if I sacrifice 4 years of my life being associate, I can reach my engineering salary. In a way, if I shift to product manager.
Come again?
So let's say I'm gaining certain amount money, right? As an engineer.
Yeah.
And if I want to step into the role of the product manager, I should be expecting like between 2 and 4 years to reach my level of payment.
Okay, get it now. No, not necessarily. I personally have colleagues who are ex-developers and they've stepped into the product manager role. They haven't been an associate, but that's because they've worked in product teams before. They know how the good development process goes. They might come with the industry and business knowledge and understanding. So they wouldn't need to, start from scratch and learn the ropes from the beginning.
I see.
Yeah.
So it can be a smart transition, let's say, smooth transition.
Yes, especially for products which are more, how to say, technical, or if you'll be working on some internal platform or more infrastructure related product, coming from a developer position, you can step into a more technical product manager role, even if it's not called technical, but this technical background and experience that you bring to the table will be super valuable, and you can directly step into, managing your new product.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, go and vote into the new survey that you see on the screens. It will be interesting to know how many years of experience you already have in the IT industry. And moving forward, here I've put a list of books and reads that it would be great to look at. And not only I think they will be super useful, not only if you're interested into becoming a product manager or if you want to develop your product management skills, but also if you're working on a product team as a developer, QA, or designer, they will be definitely helpful. So one of my favorite books is by Marty Kagan, who I already mentioned at the start of the presentation. And my work and even this presentation is very much inspired by him. And the book is called Inspired, or How to Create Tech Products That Customers Love. It's a great book about how product management teams work and should work, and what it means to be an empowered and autonomous product team. Marty Kagan even released a new book 2 or 3 months ago, which is called Empowered, and he focuses on the teams and the team practices. So it's also worth looking at. And at SumUp, most of our teams, not just the product managers, have read this book. Some of us have attended workshops with Marty Kagan. Yeah, he's definitely great. The other read, which is very popular in this area, is the article by Ben Horowitz, which is called Good Product Manager, Bad Product Manager. Definitely worth reading. There are a lot of books on lean analytics, lean enterprise, lean customer development. And also some other business and product management books that you can look at. The one about user story mapping that I mentioned, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, another great book by Ben Horowitz, Hooked, or How to Build habit forming products is also great. Hacking growth. There are books, great books about scaling companies and products. So yeah, a lot of reads out there, definitely worth reading. And for product development teams, the Accelerate book is very highly recommended as well, because it really focuses on some practical techniques and practices that modern development teams apply in order to move to this continuous integration and continuous deployment and development. So again, a great read. Okay, and yeah, while we are on the books slide, please share with us how many hours you spend weekly for learning. Okay, some events and communities that I can recommend to look at. Mind the Product is probably the largest community in the world for product managers. They run an annual conference in major cities across the globe. They have great blog, a lot of videos on YouTube from the conference that you can look at. And they also have these local communities in different cities, which are called Product Tank. We have a Product Tank community in Sofia. And now with the pandemic and more people going and working virtually and remotely, a lot of these meetups happen virtually. So you can attend them no matter where you live or where you reside. Another great conference, which is run every year in Zurich, Switzerland, is the Product Management Festival. It gathers more than 1,000 product managers from all over the world, not just Europe. It's a great event, and this is the community which produces the report that I shared with you in the previous slides. So yeah, go check them out. They also have a great newsletter and articles and some free virtual meetups. And the other blog is the Silicon Valley Product Group, which is the blog of Marty Kagan, and he very often posts great articles, pretty short to read, but very practical and very useful. And a lot of the articles on the blog actually come from the book, or he puts later in a book. So definitely worth looking at it. Okay. Let's see before we proceed to the questions. Okay, a lot of people spend at least 8 hours weekly for learning, which is great. Again, for the learning, especially if you're working either for a company or as a freelancer, I think it's a great practice to dedicate some time in your calendar. Let's say every Friday afternoon or 2 afternoons in the week, I dedicate to reading a new book or to taking an online course, to explore new technique, or to learn something new. It's a great way to make sure that you dedicate some time for learning. Okay. Should we take a short break before we proceed?
Yes,
to
thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much. Let's take a short break for about 10 minutes and we continue with the questions. Please, guys, to all attendees, please ask questions so that we can answer. Feel free to ask anything you want to know. Thank you.
Okay, I will put up a timer here.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and during the break, you can reply to the new survey that we've just posted about what's your target career. It would be curious to know. Okay.
We have some information on the target career. 34% project manager. But actually, I believe that this evening topic is product manager, not project manager. Probably that's a typo in the poll. right? So we are assuming that this is product manager, and apparently the majority of our attendances are focused on this role. Okay, good. Okay,
Nice.
so yeah. So let me start with the questions that we have so far.
Okay.
Top down. How do you manage new product development?
That's a broad question.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Can we extend? Sorry, Antoniya.
Yeah.
Can we extend a bit the question, even if it's in your organization? But let's say you want a new product, you don't have a team. What do you do?
I don't have a team
yet. Yeah.
That's a great challenge to start with.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. We usually try to put together some team as a start, even if it's just 2 or 3 people having the most critical skill set that is needed to start somewhere. Yeah, so I think it's pretty hard to do whatever research or the discovery or applying of the discovery techniques that we talked about without a team. So when we want to launch a new product, we usually start with hiring 2 or 3 people. It could be even internal hires from the organization who already know at least the business and the industry, and they won't be starting from scratch, so that they can be fully dedicated on this new topic and they can start researching it. They can start talking to internal and external stakeholders, look at the competitors, if there are any, explore them, the market and the industry even deeper. Yeah, and we usually start from there, and then we really try to apply some of these product discovery techniques that I shared with you to make sure that we will be really solving a problem. Otherwise, we might end up again with some product or feature which is not needed by anyone, or it's needed just by a couple of people out there. So we really invest a lot of time into good research, testing, talking to potential customers, even identifying some early adopters of this new product so we can engage them from the very beginning and gain their feedback on a regular basis. And then we move to real execution and delivery. But before that, there's a lot of experimentation, testing, prototyping, before we ship a single feature.
Okay. And based on your experience, what kind of issues are popping up in such brand new team and brand new development?
Yeah, they could be various. One thing is if we are working with new hires who don't know the industry, who don't know the business, who don't know the products that we already have out there on the market. I think this is the toughest scenario because they would need to invest some more time early on into learning all these things before they can start really contributing. And when you start from scratch, it takes a lot of time to build the needed relationship within the team, collaboration that is needed. There would be some difficulties to establish the people as a team as a start, and then the rest of the difficulties related to defining the problem that you want to solve, experimenting with it, and testing out some potential solutions. So yeah, building a team from scratch is really challenging, and it will depend on the personalities that you bring on board. Other challenges that I've seen are sometimes a lack of support from the existing product teams or from other business and operational functions within the company, because they are so used to the current setup of products and services, to the teams that they work with, that sometimes when you start something new, it's hard to find the support of these external key stakeholders because they usually have more important stuff to do than to dedicate time to share learnings or to give advice and any kind of support. So that could be also a challenge. And maybe in addition to knowing the business and the industry and the product, you get to know also the technological part of it. What is the current infrastructure that you have in place? What are the tools, the development languages that are used already in the company? Will they work for the new product that you want to build? Do you know them well enough? So this is also something that needs to be considered. But again, it depends on how this new initiative, a team or product team, is positioned within the company. If there is strong support from the senior management and the CEO, if it's part of the company objectives to launch a completely new product or service, and all other teams, or at least the ones which are relevant, are engaged, and part of their OKRs is to contribute to establishing this new product and team, then things might work out more smoothly. I think that's what comes to my mind based on experience. Any other supporting questions here or clarifications?
Maybe the other colleagues want to jump in.
Yeah, sure.
Antoniya and Emil, guys, would you like to add something or ask something related to the new product development?
Well, I was going to ask more like, if I want to be a freelancer, just try to mix both things. If I'm going to be a freelancer, so my product probably will be my services. So that's my understanding. How I build those, or how to identify what kind of services. Let's try to use the framework which you already proposed, or what you're applying at the higher level in a bigger corporation to a freelancer. Or I think freelancing is close to a startup, just startup with a single person team. So yeah, I think it's applicable for startups as well. Startup which provides services. So what's the idea? How I identify or validate that the services which I can provide will cost something. Someone will like to use those services.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that you can try to apply some of even the product discovery techniques to the business of a freelancer, and try to define your services as a portfolio of products or services that you want to deliver to your customers. And then probably some of the techniques like the lean startup or the startup canvas or any business canvas model would work for you to describe what are the problems that you want to solve, having some expertise in place that you can bring to the table, some know-how, previous experience, etc. It will help you to define who are the key users of these skills and expertise, and also you can come up with some ideas of tests, how you can, let's say, run a test of delivering a new service for just one or two users and seeing how it goes, gathering their feedback, or even creating some kind of a smaller free prototype that people can play with. If it's a new tool or a new training that you want to deliver, it really depends again on the services. But definitely you can play around with it, and it can give you a better understanding of your users or clients and how you can better position your services. So
let's make it a bit concrete. So imagine that I want to provide technical knowledge about JavaScript, and I already have an experience and I want to become a freelancer. So let's put those boundaries. And I imagine that my service will be like a teaching course or platform where they can learn how to, well, it will target probably juniors, junior developers, or people who are switching career paths. So the idea is that I have the skills to record those videos, but I don't know how to approach that problem. So my product is these video courses. It's in my head, but what are the next steps? And I want to become a freelancer in that area.
Okay. Yeah, so again, definitely in this type of scenario, I think you can build a detailed canvas. There is a template for that, and you will see there are even guidelines to how to fill in the template itself. It will give you even a better understanding of what's the real problem that you're solving. Because you have JavaScript knowledge and you want to deliver trainings, but what's the problem that you'll be solving? You want to educate newcomers in the area, or you want to train experienced professional who just need this additional subset of skills, or you want to provide some certification to already experienced developers. There are different aspects that you can explore. You can also run a survey. Surveys are a great tool in this area to see what would be a great format for this training for your potential users. Do they want videos? Do they want presentations and working on their own pace and just asking you questions? There are different types of training formats, and a great way to explore this is by running surveys, either with communities, or if you already have some existing database of users, you can ask them as well what they think about it. Another interesting tool that I've come across is writing something like a press release message. Imagine you've already done the product or the service you want to deliver, and you're writing a press release email where you describe it. What's the new service, how it works, what would be its advantages for the users. And once you write this down, again, a lot of ideas may pop up, or you will better crystallize your end goal, or you may even come up with new solutions. And you can share it again with some closer group of yours, either friends or users that you identify with, early adopters, and see how they will respond to it. These are some of the techniques that come to my mind.
I like this idea. It's I think I've heard about it, but it's a really good one. So I imagine, I'm trying to summarize it. I imagine that it's already developed, and I try to crystallize it, and this will make me understand what are the gaps, what I should provide. That's great. Thank you.
Sure. There are maybe many others. These are just the ones that come on the top of my mind. Again, you can also do a story map. It's a great technique in almost any case or scenario. And imagine your courses with the different modules, the different target audience, the platform that you want to put the course on. And once you visualize it as a picture split into some activities or sub-activities, you will also be able to define like what's the minimum set, where I want to start, what's the first thing that I want to deliver to my users. Is it just module one of the course, or I will do a how is it called, crash course on JavaScript just for 1 hour and see how people will respond, or for 1 day, whatever is possible,
Yeah, I like the idea. Is there a book or a place where I can see different techniques like the ones you already described?
As I said in the presentation, I'm not aware of a single book that describes them all, but the inspired one of Marty Kagan mentions most of the techniques, even some more in addition to the ones I mentioned in the presentation. And there, for story mapping, the book of Jeff Patton about user story mapping, it's the best one out there. It's a bestseller. And there are a lot of also short videos on YouTube and tutorials explaining how you can apply the technique on your own. But I think Inspired by Marty Kagan is a pretty good summary of the techniques. And then if something gets your attention, you can look it up and read further about it.
Okay, thank you. I noted that down. Thanks.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you, guys. Should I move to the next question?
Yep.
Right. A lot of people talk about Agile. What Agile training certification would complement product manager?
Well, as a start, I think all product managers and developers need to look at the Agile Manifesto and see what are its main principles, so to say, because most
But
teams...
It's just one page.
Yeah, it's one page, but there's so much behind it if you want to apply it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you can look up the different Agile methods and frameworks such as Scrum or Kanban. There are certifications for Scrum product owner or Scrum master or even Scrum developer if you want to get certified in any of these areas, because there was part of the question about certifications. The more I think it's definitely great to know more about these techniques and frameworks, because in this way you can pick different parts of it which make sense to you and to your team and the product, and again you can apply them on a daily basis or experiment with them.
Does it, I just want to clarify something. Does it mean that if I want to become a product manager, I have to be familiar, just briefly familiar with all the techniques, and I'll get better understanding once I start working in a specific enterprise, or how that goes?
From my experience, even if you want to start as an associate product manager, it would be definitely great, at least if you've read about it, because during the initial interviews, you can share your understanding and interest in this area, or some even basic knowledge that at least you've heard about Agile and that it exists, and also about Scrum and Kanban. It's really difficult to learn this technique just from the books if you haven't applied them, but knowing what they are about in their core and knowing the essentials, the different techniques will be definitely helpful, even if you are just starting. Otherwise, you won't know about even simple techniques like running a retrospection meeting, which is probably one of the most important meetings that a team should do on a regular basis. It's super logical and natural, but a lot of people probably won't know about it if they haven't looked at some of these frameworks with their supporting tools and techniques. So even if you haven't tried them out in the work field, having read some books or having just a general understanding and knowledge will definitely be an advantage when you are applying for this type of job.
Thank you.
So I see some fancy words or some fancy frameworks. You mentioned Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Lean. What should I start with? Okay, I see that there is one page, Agile Manifesto. Okay, I can read that clearly. But what should I do next? Should I go for the Scrum? Should I go for the Lean or Kanban or both three? I'm confused at this point.
Sorry, yeah. But the questions are becoming more and more general. I mean, what do you want to do with yourself?
I don't know. I want to place myself.
You don't know at all. So it's
no,
I know.
No, of course I know. I want to gain more money and I want to place myself in a good company, like SumUp. Okay, but I have no idea what to do. What would you advise me related to these Agile frameworks?
So with the more money than what you get from as a senior senior developer, let's say, Tony has shown us that actually it will be difficult because actually the salaries are pretty much similar between a senior, let's say, really senior.
No, I'm not a senior engineer. Sorry, I just finished my studies in art, let's say, and I want to become a product manager. I want to learn something about this agile framework. So what should I start with?
Unfortunately, I'll repeat what Tony said, because actually the manifesto is the beginning and everyone should start from it. And because actually
I went through it. It's one page, right? Just some nice and then some bold statements,
Then you mentioned that you want to get to a specific company. Then during the interview process, for example, you can ask what the framework they're using. Is it Kanban, or is it some Scrum, or it's something else? And then this could give you some idea where to continue. So if it's a Scrum, you can search for Scrum development. If it's Kanban, then you go for some Kanban development. So you should focus your development based on the needs of the company that you're targeting. And if you want to shoot in general, like something universal, there is no such thing in the agile world. Unfortunately, for my personal experience, even companies that claim that have Kanban methodology or Scrum methodology, in fact, they have their own methodologies. I mean, they always have something really, really specific for the company, which is something that you cannot learn from courses or anything. You can learn only from internal experience or knowledge sharing from internal people in this company. So yes, you can have a base, you can have a basic understanding, you can have experience from other companies, but the most important thing is that you should be open to learn and adapt to the new environment, to the new methodology in the new company.
Okay.
And that's in the manifesto. You need to be adaptive. I mean, that's the core thing.
I need
Agile
money.
is about
I need money.
Money. You need to be adaptive and think about something else.
Tell this to my wife. Anyways, right. That was a provocative question. So sorry for that. Okay. Right. So we don't have precise answer, but I would say that probably learning Scrum will provide the most comprehensive idea about these frameworks, right? Kanban is short of, how to say, limited Scrum or
Actually, I think that Kanban is suitable for more mature product teams, more experienced teams who've already gone, let's say, through the Scrum framework.
Yeah, exactly. We've already for 2 years, we are not using Scrum. We are more into Kanban, but we are the same people working together since a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need all these meetings and stuff like that. We don't need that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can just pick one meeting from the Scrum guidelines and which works for you and just keep this one. But if your team is cross-functional, co-located, you sit next to each other, okay, now it's a different situation with the virtual and remote work, but then you know each other and how you work, and you know your product inside out, and you don't need to wait for the meeting tomorrow to discuss some critical issues or important topics. But again, yeah, I agree with Dani. There is no recipe for success in this area. The more you read, the more you know. Go to meetups, conferences, trainings. All these learnings will be super helpful, but it depends from company to company, and even because you mentioned SumUp, within SumUp, every team chooses the frameworks and the practices that they want to apply, depending on the product that they work on, depending on the maturity of the people within the team. Some teams are doing Scrum almost by the book, doing sprints, doing all the ceremonies. My teams are more working more the Kanban way. because the people are working together already for 5 years and 5 or even more years. We know each other super well, and we don't need all the ceremonies to, make the flow of work go smoothly.
Yeah.
And there are even other frameworks that we look at and organize ourselves. We looked at the Spotify framework of how teams are organized. We look at organic agility, which is something new, and you can look it up as well. I mean, different practices depending on not just the company, but also the team. And during the interview process, it would be great to ask how the company or the teams are organized and how they work. But again, it may also vary across the different teams within the company itself.
Okay, yeah. I guess we covered this topic.
I think I might have a question here, because
please.
Actually, we saw from the survey that there are a lot of project managers in our call right now, and I know that Tony has this experience of transitioning from project management to product management. Could you share what are the challenges of this transition in the career?
Yes, sure. Actually, I have more years of working experience as a project manager than product manager. But during the last 4 years that I've worked as a product manager, I guess I've learned more and experienced so many changes that it's not comparable to the previous 10 years. But it's definitely a different role, although yet within some companies, project manager, product owner are used interchangeably. But the main difference for me is that, when I worked as a project manager, I worked on a certain project with a start and expected at least finish date. You have a budget constraints that you work with. You have a team for one project, and for the next one, you could be working with completely different people for a different customer. You could be even delivering a different product. I personally transitioned to product management because I personally find it as a more challenging role. It gives me a great opportunity to learn, to experience more stuff on a daily basis, either from my communication with the team, with the clients. I get to learn a lot about the industry, about technology and design. So if you are this kind of naturally inquisitive person, I think it's a great area for professional development. And in this role, you really get the sense of true ownership of your product. You get this sense of belonging in a team and a company, especially if the companies and the teams are operating in these modern, more efficient, more agile and adaptive ways. You get to experience on a daily basis how your work brings value to someone. And it gives you great motivation and great satisfaction at the end of the day. Because you're not changing the client every other day, you're not changing the product. You strive for this continuous improvement. You constantly focus on bringing value for your users, coming up with new innovative ways to do that. And it's challenging, super challenging, because you need to learn all the things I mentioned on the slides and be ready to experiment every day. But it's definitely very, very rewarding. And that's why I switched to this role, and I personally really enjoy it. Hope I answered your question.
Yes, indeed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess you can see how passionate I'm about it, but yeah, I also think it's...
yeah, you're like a preacher, I feel like in the church.
I'm an evangelist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it mean that the product managers are more loyal to the company long-term compared to the project managers? So because of those changes, this is like a shift in some people do like the shift, the changes, but some are kind of reserved. And I think it comes with the age. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Again, we can say it depends, but I also think that in general, product managers are more loyal, and probably that's because of this sense of belonging and ownership of this product that you are responsible for and for developing it. While with the project, again, it depends on the setup of the company, but you might be just focused on delivering your project on time and within the budget with the people resources that you have in place, and then you move on to the next thing. And you can do this for different companies and for different projects, but this sense of ownership and feeling responsible for the development of your product usually on one side empowers the people and makes them more engaged. On the other side, it comes with respective responsibilities. But usually, if the company is also good at again applying these modern practices, product managers stick around for longer periods of time. That's my observation. And I, as a product manager, try to engage the developers and the designers I work with in this discovery and development process as much as possible, because I see how much more engaged the engineers are when they know their users, their pains and their issues, and they completely change their attitude about the development work and the product itself and the company, and eventually they also become more loyal. That's my observation.
Great insight. Thank you.
Thank you. Meanwhile, a related question popped up by Alexandra. How good is if a company use both Kanban and Scrum?
How good it is?
Yeah.
I think it's completely fine.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it depends on the teams, their maturity, for how long these people have worked together on this particular product. It's perfectly fine.
I can share my personal experience. We are contractors for a UK company, and my team, which is located predominantly in Bulgaria, is working using Kanban, which means that we have less meetings. We need better defined tasks, and we deliver way more work compared to the internal teams, which are using Scrum. It's a little bit slower, but they like it. They stick to that thing, and I'm not sure when they will do the shift. But definitely, in my opinion, Kanban is way more productive if you're a distributed team. So if you're spread across several locations and you optimize the meetings. But this is just my observation.
I will definitely agree and align with you. This is how we work in our distributed teams. So basically, for the teams that we have since a couple of years, we are already into the Kanban stuff, right? And we don't have almost no meetings. But for new teams, where the guys are freshly hired, and especially when they don't have this business knowledge for our specific business, we usually build Scrum teams so that we can help them get to know each other better and have those meetings, especially retrospectives and so on, lessons learned, etc., so that they can mature.
Just a comment on all this, because we are talking a lot about Agile methodologies, but in the same time, we do have people here with courses in, let's say, not so Agile methodologies like Prince2, PMP, and PMI methodologies. So yes, the question was how good it is, but good has different aspects. It could be productive, as you said, to use Kanban or other Agile methodologies. It will be productive for the team itself, but for sure it's not going to be cost efficient if you don't use, let's say, PMI methodology or Prince2 methodology, because Agile doesn't care about budget, and if you're, big organization selling to a lot of clients, the selling part will suffer. And actually, I think personally, from my experience, that a good program management done in the let's say PMI based methodologies will be more efficient for the company compared to Agile methodologies. But the best is, I think, that you have program management using, let's say, PMI or Prince2, and then you have in the teams, you have whatever they want, something Agile. But that's from my experience.
Yeah, I think you're right. And even not in so big corporations, but I can share experience from SumUp as well, which is a fast growing and scaling company at the moment. There were some cases or initiatives where we have applied a more traditional approach or project management the waterfall way, especially when it comes to new regulations like the GDPR enforcement or changes related to Brexit. Then you have super clear requirements coming from the regulators. And in such cases, I think more traditional approach could be more effective, as you said. We have outlined the list of requirements that we need to do. We have identified the key stakeholders. We have identified responsible people or owners of the different activities or areas that we need to cover. And we have come up with a pretty much traditional Gantt chart or project plan with the respective responsible people and teams. And from there on, again, it was up to the teams how they will implement the changes, as long as they do it within the time frame for this new legislation. But in such cases, I think these type of methodologies are very helpful, and it's good to have people within the organizations who know them and know how to apply them. Also for Prince, I really like their business case, the business case part of the methodology. It's something that we also apply on new initiatives or when we have a new portfolio of products that we want to build. Sometimes we create pretty traditional business cases describing why we're doing it, what's the problem that we're solving, what's the budget that we expect to need, what are the resources and the skill sets that we need. So again, each and one of these frameworks might be useful at certain stage of the company development or for a certain situation or initiative that you need to run. So yeah, my experience also confirms it.
Okay, thanks. Right, all questions related to the video recording, yes, you'll get it once we finish the session and you have the recording. Okay, something that I believe we answered, but still, I'm going to read this question. Do I need to be technically well skilled to become a good product manager? Should I repeat?
No. It took me some time to unmute myself. Sorry. That's one of my favorite questions. And when I was
let me guess the answer. It depends.
No. Yeah, it depends on the company and the product, and yeah, how technical you need to be for the respective product. But I'm laughing because when I was going through the interviews for SumUp, applying as a product owner back then, because in the beginning we were called product owners, but we were doing what a typical product manager does, and that are just details. But I was telling my future manager, you should know that I'm not an ex-developer. I don't plan to become a developer. I don't know any development language, but I'm curious to learn and to know more. So again, I don't think you need to have practical experience or to have developed an application yourself, but it's nice to have done some introductory courses to computer programming and to know some of the basics. Or, of course, again, it depends on the company, but to know terms like infrastructure, DevOps, continuous integration and development, and what stands behind them, what's solution architecture, also what could be the different release cycles, or how the typical software development process goes from the design, development, different testing approaches that can be applied. All this will help you on the job every day. Again, it's hard to learn just from the books. So I think the best way is to start somewhere and then try to learn on the spot, on the job. Talk to your teammates, to the engineers that you work with, ask them questions, be curious about it, get to know what's the infrastructure in your company, what's the architecture of your products. What's the release cycle or pipelines, what types of testing is applied, is there any automation testing in place? This will help you also to have better and more meaningful conversations with the developers that you work with, and even some basic knowledge and understanding is definitely an advantage.
I can share some experience in our company. We have like 20 products which we are developing, right? And for most of them, an entry point in terms of technical skills, it's perfectly fine for the product managers. But we've tried for some specific projects like high frequency trading or algorithmic trading, and there is no way that without really strong technical background to deal with this product. I mean, we tried, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I also think it rarely works. We have similar cases with some products which are more, let's say, internal platforms on which other teams step to build their products, or some integrations, really heavy integrations or certifications that we need to do with third parties. And these type of activities require very deep technical knowledge. And in these cases, most of our product managers are also, they've been developers in the past, and they know their way around much better than someone like me who hasn't done it, on the job and has just read some articles or asked questions. It's a completely different even mindset that you have and approach to solving the issues that may pop up. Well, if you're working more on a consumer-facing products, it's definitely, I think, much easier to be someone who is not coming from a technical background, because there you get the chance to apply a lot of these discovery techniques, to do a lot of research and data analysis, and this is something that every product manager should do, and it doesn't require development skills, so to say.
Actually, I could add here, my opinion here is that actually the product manager should close the gap between the client and the product, the technical part of the product, the technical people that are developing the product. I'm not considering here only software products. I am talking also some other technical products, for example, or product that is not technical at all. But I think this gap is important. That if the gap is too big between the technology and the customers, then even it's better than the product manager is not technical, and this person should be able to understand better the clients, because this is the primary responsibility, to understand the client, the requirements of the client, and to translate them to the technical people. But again, the first priority is to understand the client, not the technical people. It is important, and it will be helpful to understand also the technical people, but we focus on the client. That's the modern world, that the priority is client. So my opinion is that if the gap is too big, the product manager should be not so much technical, even because you know, there is in psychology there is such a thing that is called groupthink. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but actually, if we have a technical product manager working together with technical people, they could become a victim of groupthink, and then they could become, you know, not able to understand the client in the right way. And I saw a lot of products that are technically led, and they were not able to deliver the value to the clients.
Again, it depends, of course. But
Yeah.
for again, I don't want to argue here, but for some specific projects like I mentioned, high frequency trading and so on, this cannot be led by non-technical guy.
Yeah,
we tried it; it's impossible.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they said. I mean, the gap between your clients and your product is very small.
Yeah, in a way.
I mean, your clients understand your product.
Yeah, that's also the case with internal platform or products, because in these cases, you know that the rest of the product teams, they are your clients, and they understand what they need, and you understand them way better than when we talk about external end users or clients. But also, as I gave some examples with some specific integrations or certifications with third parties, sometimes they're also very specific requirements, and it will be hard for a non-technical person to run this type of initiatives. Yeah.
May I add here a provocative question? Very provocative. Okay. If the product owner, for some reason, is not technically skilled at all, how you avoid corruption in the team? Let's say there are no objective KPIs. How you avoid corruption with the ETAs, for instance?
What do you mean with corruption in this case?
Corruption is how long it will take to build this feature. And the answer from the technical team would be 3 weeks, maybe 2 months. How you justify that? How you can justify that?
I think it's a project management question, not product management question, but okay, I'll give my opinion, and the others could join as well. I was a project manager in the past, and when I had such situations, I challenged the estimation with another team member, another member from another team. So, and when they found out that I'm always challenging this, they stopped doing this. And at some point, they knew that I will check it. And at some point, they stopped doing it. They just ceased doing this. So that was my way.
Yeah.
Let's see the others.
Yeah, for the estimations, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I thought the connection broke. For the estimations, I think you can apply different techniques again. Sometimes even running 2 or 3 techniques simultaneously to see what would be the results. But at the end of the day, what I'm personally striving to achieve with the teams I work with is not, I go to them and I tell them, hey guys, we need to build this feature, how much time it will take. But again, I'm engaging the whole development team in the process from the very beginning. So we're defining the problem together with the engineers and the designer. while we are doing it, the designer is scratching on the whiteboard a potential prototype or a solution that we want to test out. The developers are shooting, this may take 1 day, or we can use this already existing thing and just rework it a bit and it will work in this way. So if you're engaging the whole team in the whole process, from the definition of the problem to coming up with different solutions that you want to test out, I think in most cases you won't be in this scenario where people will try to play around with the time frames at the estimation, because they in this case they are focused on solving the problem and bringing value. And of course, from the beginning, it might be hard for you as a non-technical person to judge whether some estimation is realistic or not. But with the experience, it doesn't take much time. It could be just a matter of a couple of months to be able to ask the right questions, to provoke people. Are you sure you can do it this? Are you sure this is the right way to build it? Can we do this faster? Can we apply the other thing? So again, if you want to establish a well-functioning, empowered team, in most cases, we shouldn't be even in this scenario of people playing around with estimations and putting some buffers in there.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to hear, right? Basically, the guys are genuinely good. They don't want to overestimate or something, but they just want to be on the safe side. So they're tending to put a lot of buffers, right? Just to avoid the unknowns. And we should, and our job should be day one to make sure that we reduce the unknowns. Unknowns by involving the team day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you clarify together what you want to build, sometimes we're even using a high fidelity prototype as requirements. You put the high fidelity prototype in the ticket, and then everyone knows what's the end result. And then on a daily basis, we check with everyone, hey, what's your progress? Do you have any obstacles? How is it going? Can I help you with something? These are some, small things that you can apply to make sure that things are progressing as expected. And if you work as a team, even if one developer tries to play around, I believe that the rest will challenge him sooner or later.
Exactly. It happens, especially in mature teams.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. I guess we are almost out of questions. Let me check. Okay, last question. What is the best size company that I should look for a start? 10, 15 people, larger or smaller? From the perspective of product management, right?
Yeah. From my personal experience, I haven't worked in an early startup, to be honest, so it's hard to compare, but I've joined SumUp when the company had just hit break even. And there were just 60 people in Bulgaria and 300 across the globe. And now they're probably close to 3,000 across the globe. And I think for me, it was a great moment to join, because the company had already tackled a lot of difficulties. It had hit the break even. It had some investments in place. The near future was secured, so to say. And I joined just before this fast growing scaling stage, where a lot of changes happened every day. So many transformations that for 3 to 4 years, you get to experience so much. I think it's a super great experience, which will be helpful whatever you go to next as a company or as a product, because you just get to learn a lot of stuff in a super fast-paced environment. And you get to explore different techniques, different organizational setups. Again, it depends on the company and how willing the leadership is to transform and to turn this scaling company into a success. But I think it's one of the greatest moments or stages to join a company, because it gives you a lot of learning opportunities. And you get your salary, so to say, every month for sure. While with the early startups, it's a risky
not necessarily
endeavor.
the case.
Yes. It depends on the funds you have in the bank account.
Yeah. I would say that it's not exactly about the size, rather the business and whether it's a fast moving business, right? Fast-paced business. I believe that me personally, I spent like my entire career in such kind of companies. I never worked into a corporation, for good or for bad, and I would never do that. But yeah, I believe that the fast-moving companies or the fast market is the best thing, because it's challenging. Every day is different, and you learn a lot weekly. I took a vacation for 3 days last week in our company, and I needed 3 days to cope with the changes for 3 days. It's insane, right? It's insane.
I usually need double the time to catch
it's just
up.
so fast. So many things changed for 3 days that I realized that when I took vacation, right?
Yeah, true. But it's also, I think, about the product. If you want to move into this role, it's good to have some idea of what products might inspire you. Are there any industries that you'll never work for? For example, I can't imagine myself working for a company which produces cigarettes, let's say, or which deals with gambling products. So if the product is something that you like, or you see its true purpose and the value that it brings to the end user, it will make your life much easier, and you'll be way more motivated and engaged in your work.
Yeah.
And if you allow me here, an HR view on all this, and actually, yes, you're right about the speed and all you said about startups and small companies. But on the other side, you have, yes, because of the market in a small company, you learn from your experience every day. That's true. The speed is great. That's true. But in the bigger companies, you have other opportunities that are much more possible. Like, for example, learning from other people, because they are much more bigger teams. So you much learn from a champion in a domain being there. And also for a new starter, I would say that, you're going to have much more channels and resources to learn in a bigger company. You can learn from another person. You could have a mentor, a coach. You can have a paid course by the company. All this is less possible to happen in a small company. But on the other side, you don't have the freedom. You don't have the responsibilities that will develop you as a professional. So there are pluses and minuses, and the person first needs to look at themselves and see what they want in their future, and then to decide and answer this question.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we can get back to what Antoniya said, that they're checking the personality on their interviews, right? So it's about your personality, whether you're fit for such kind of companies or your personality suits better the corporate environment. So you should justify it for yourself, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we're out of time, out of questions, just in time, almost there. So thank you very much, guys. That was a great session. Thank you, Antoniya, for your contribution. And all of you guys, cheers. See you next time. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks everyone for your time. Have a nice evening. Bye.